I wasn't looking for love that October evening at Upstream Books. Hell, I wasn't even looking for company. Just needed somewhere warm to escape the bitter Omaha wind rattling my apartment windows. The poetry night felt safe, anonymous. Perfect for someone like me who spent days helping trauma patients move through pain they couldn't speak. The bookstore smelled like coffee and old paper, exactly the kind of sanctuary I craved. I clutched my worn copy of Maya Angelou poems, planning to read Still I Rise if Courage Struck. 20 other people scattered among mismatched chairs, mostly regulars I recognized but never spoke to. Then she stepped up to the microphone. Blonde hair catching lamplight, blue eyes scanning the room with quiet confidence. Something about her made my breath catch. Professional composure, maybe. Or the way she held herself like someone accustomed to being heard. "I'd like to share something by Maya Angelou," she said, voice clear as winter air. My stomach dropped. The same poem I'd chosen. The same verses I'd been rehearsing silently for weeks. She began reciting Still I Rise with such emotional precision it felt like she was reading my own thoughts aloud. Every emphasis exactly where I would have placed it, every pause mirroring my own internal rhythm. I found myself mouthing the words along with her, completely mesmerized. Halfway through, her eyes found mine across the crowded room. Something shifted. Her voice wavered slightly on, "You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise." Our gazes locked, and I swear the entire bookstore faded away. She finished to polite applause, but I barely heard it. Just watched her step down, cheeks flushed, looking as shaken as I felt. The evening continued with other readers, but I couldn't focus. Kept stealing glances at the blonde woman who'd somehow reached inside my chest and squeezed my heart without permission. When the event ended, I lingered by the poetry section, pretending to browse. "Excuse me." I turned. She stood there, uncertainty replacing her earlier confidence. "You were mouthing the words," she said. "Same poem?" "Yeah." I held up my book, suddenly self-conscious. Great minds, I guess. Or kindred spirits. She extended her hand. Alice Turner. Caitlin Miller. Her grip was firm, warm, lasted a beat longer than necessary. "You read it beautifully. Thank you." I work with people who need those words. Reminds me why I chose psychology. Dance therapy here. Same reason, different language. Alice's smile transformed her entire face. "Really? I've been wanting to explore movement-based approaches with my clients. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime, compare notes?" The invitation hung between us, loaded with possibilities neither of us fully understood yet. "Tomorrow?" I heard myself say. "There's a place called Archetype downtown." "Perfect." 2:00? I nodded, watching her gather her things. As she headed toward the door, she glanced back once, that same uncertain smile playing at her lips. Walking home through autumn streets, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just changed. The mirror in my hallway reflected only my flushed face and wild auburn hair, but for a moment, I could have sworn I saw someone else standing beside me. Coffee at Archetype turned into 3 hours of conversation that flowed like we'd known each other for years. Alice leaned forward when she talked, hands gesturing gracefully as she described her practice. I found myself studying the way her lips curved around certain words, the intensity in those blue eyes when she discussed helping people heal. "I'd love to see your studio," she said as we finally prepared to leave. "If that's not too forward." "Not at all. Professional curiosity, right?" But the way she said it, the slight flush coloring her cheeks, suggested something beyond mere professional interest. My studio occupied the second floor of a converted warehouse. Hardwood floors, mirrors covering 2 walls, late afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows. I always felt peace here, but showing it to Alice made me suddenly aware of how intimate the space was. "This is beautiful," she breathed, stepping into the center of the room. "I can feel the healing energy." I demonstrated some basic techniques, explaining how movement could unlock trauma stored in the body. Alice watched intently, occasionally asking thoughtful questions that showed she genuinely understood the connection between physical and emotional release. "Can I try something?" she asked. I guided her through a simple exercise, standing behind her to adjust her posture. The moment my hands touched her shoulders, electricity shot through both of us. She inhaled sharply, and I felt her muscles tense under my palms. "Breathe," I whispered, probably closer to her ear than necessary. She melted into the movement, trusting my guidance completely. When her back pressed against my chest during one sequence, we both froze. The mirror reflected us together, her blonde hair contrasting with my auburn, our bodies fitting together like puzzle pieces. "Sorry," she murmured, stepping away quickly. "Don't be." The next week, I attended one of Alice's group sessions. She'd invited me to observe, suggesting our approaches might complement each other. I sat in the back corner of her office, watching her work her magic with 6 struggling individuals. Her technique was masterful. Where I used movement to access buried emotions, Alice used carefully crafted questions and pregnant silences. She created safe space with nothing but her presence and genuine empathy. During a particularly intense moment when one client broke down discussing childhood abuse, Alice caught my eye in the mirror behind her desk. Something passed between us, unspoken understanding about the privilege of witnessing human vulnerability. After the session ended, and clients filtered out, we stood alone in her office. "You're incredible at this," I told her. "So are you. I saw how that woman relaxed when you showed her the breathing technique. We make a good team." "Yeah." Alice moved closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume. "We do." The air between us crackled with unspoken possibilities. Professional boundaries blurred dangerously as we found ourselves gravitating toward each other like magnets. "Caitlin, I should probably mention that I don't usually date clients referrals? Date women." The admission hung heavy between us. Alice looked terrified and exhilarated simultaneously. "Me neither," I lied, because the truth was more complicated. I'd always been attracted to women but spent years convincing myself otherwise. "Maybe we should stick to professional collaboration," she said, but didn't step away. "Probably wise." Neither of us moved. Alice's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. She glanced at it reluctantly. "Dinner appointment. Rain check on figuring this out?" "Sure." But as she gathered her things, I caught her stealing glances at me in the reflection of her office window. And when she brushed past me at the door, her hand briefly touched mine. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared at my reflection and wondered what the hell was happening to me. Alice Turner was awakening something I'd kept buried for years, something that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Professional collaboration became our excuse to spend time together. Alice started referring clients to my movement therapy sessions, and I suggested her counseling services to dancers struggling with perfectionism and body image issues. We told ourselves it was purely business. The lie lasted exactly 2 weeks. Alice arrived at my studio one Thursday evening with case files and a bottle of wine, claiming we needed to discuss treatment plans for our shared clients. By the 3rd glass, our conversation had drifted far from professional territory. "I've been thinking about what you said," she murmured, curled into the corner of my couch. "About not usually dating women. What about it?" "I think you were lying." Heat flooded my cheeks. Alice's directness always caught me off guard. In her therapy sessions, she wielded insight like a scalpel, cutting straight to truth. "Maybe a little. Tell me about the first woman you kissed." The wine made honesty easier. I told her about Sarah from graduate school, about stolen kisses in empty lecture halls, and the crushing guilt that followed. About years of dating men who felt safe but never quite right. "Your turn?" I said. Alice was quiet so long I thought she wouldn't answer. "College roommate, Melissa." We studied together every night, and one evening she just leaned over and kissed me while we were reviewing for finals. Alice's fingers traced patterns on the wine glass. Scared me so bad I transferred schools. And since then, nothing. Men felt easier, less complicated. She looked at me directly. Until now. The admission settled between us like a lit fuse. We sat closer than friends, farther than lovers, both acutely aware of the invisible line we were approaching. "Alice. I know, this is crazy." But when she moved closer, I didn't pull away. When her hand touched my cheek, I leaned into the warmth. When she whispered my name like a question, I answered by closing the distance between us. Our first kiss was tentative, exploratory, soft lips and wine-sweet breath, and the shocking rightness of it. Alice's hand tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, deeper. Years of suppressed longing erupted in that single moment of connection. We broke apart, breathless, foreheads touching. "Damn," Alice whispered. "Yeah. This complicates everything." "I know." But neither of us moved away. Alice's thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I felt something fundamental shift inside my chest. This wasn't just attraction or curiosity. This was recognition, like finding a part of myself I didn't know was missing. My phone buzzing on the coffee table shattered the moment. Client emergency text. Alice used the interruption to create distance, suddenly fascinated by collecting our empty wine glasses. "I should go," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Alice, wait. This was a mistake, Caitlin. We work together. We have clients depending on us. Getting involved personally will ruin everything we've built." Her words stung because they made sense. But watching her gather her things with shaking hands, I knew she was feeling the same pull I was. The next morning brought awkward text messages and stilted phone conversations. Alice canceled our lunch meeting, claiming scheduling conflicts. When I stopped by her office with files, she treated me with professional politeness that felt like ice water. For 3 days, we maintained careful distance. I threw myself into sessions with renewed intensity, using dance to work through emotions I couldn't name. Every mirror in my studio seemed to reflect Alice's face, her kiss, the way she'd looked at me before fear took over. Alice sent referrals through email instead of personal calls. Our collaboration continued, but the easy warmth had vanished, replaced by careful boundaries that chafed like ill-fitting clothes. Friday afternoon, I found myself standing outside her office building, unsure why I'd come. Through the lobby window, I could see Alice at her car, struggling with an armload of files that scattered across the parking lot in the autumn wind. Without thinking, I pushed through the doors to help. "Thank you," she said quietly as we gathered papers together. "You're welcome." We stood facing each other in the empty parking lot, the space between us charged with everything unsaid. "I miss you," Alice admitted finally. "I miss you too. But I'm scared, Caitlin. I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I. But maybe we could figure it out together?" Alice's smile was small but genuine. The first real one I'd seen from her all week. Maybe we could. October gave way to November, with the kind of bitter cold that cuts straight through your bones. Alice and I had found our rhythm again, carefully balancing professional collaboration with the growing tension between us. We were good at pretending nothing had changed, but every accidental touch sent electricity through both of us. Then Grandmother Miller's lawyer called. "She left you the house on Dodge Street," he said over the phone. "Victorian place. Been in the family since 1920. I'd barely known my grandmother, just remembered her as a stern woman who smelled like lavender and disapproval. The idea of inheriting her entire house felt surreal. Alice came with me for the first visit, claiming she wanted to see if the space might work for client retreats. Really, I think we both needed an excuse to spend time together outside our carefully constructed professional boundaries. The house stood 3 stories tall, painted Victorian blue with white trim that needed touching up. Inside, dust motes danced in afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows. Every room held furniture draped in white sheets, like ghosts waiting to be awakened. "It's beautiful," Alice breathed, running her hand along the carved banister. "Look at these details." We explored room by room, discovering my grandmother's life preserved in photographs and antiques. Alice lingered over everything, asking questions about family history I couldn't answer. In the basement, behind boxes of Christmas decorations and old clothes, we found it. The mirror stood nearly 6 feet tall, ornate silver frame tarnished with age. The glass itself seemed darker than normal mirrors, reflecting our images with an odd depth that made us appear to stand in shadow. "It's gorgeous," Alice said, touching the frame. "Art Nouveau style, probably from the 20s. Help me move it upstairs? Seems wrong to leave something this beautiful hidden down here." Together, we wrestled the heavy mirror up to the front parlor, positioning it near the window where light could catch the intricate metalwork. "Perfect," Alice declared, then froze. "What?" She stared into the mirror, face pale. "Did you see that?" "See what?" Alice shook her head, stepping closer to the glass. "Nothing. Just tricks of light, probably." But something in her voice suggested otherwise. That first night alone in the house, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of settling wood made me jump. The mirror dominated the parlor, reflecting moonlight in ways that seemed to create movement where none existed. Around midnight, I could have sworn I heard whispers. Alice found me the next morning, hollow-eyed from lack of sleep. clutching a cup of coffee like a lifeline. Rough night? Just adjusting. Old houses make strange sounds. She studied my face with those perceptive blue eyes. Want company tonight? I could bring Chinese food, and we could christen the place properly. Relief flooded through me. I'd like that. Alice arrived at 7 with takeout and a bottle of wine, claiming we needed to celebrate my inheritance. But I caught her glancing nervously at the mirror throughout dinner, like she was waiting for something to happen. Alice, what did you see yesterday? She set down her chopsticks, considering. You'll think I'm crazy. Try me. For just a second, I saw two women in the mirror, not us. Different clothes, different time period. They were... She paused, cheeks flushing. They were embracing. The rational part of my brain dismissed it as imagination, but something cold settled in my stomach anyway. We cleaned up dinner in companionable silence, both of us stealing glances at the mirror. As darkness fell outside, the glass seemed to grow deeper, more mysterious. Caitlin. Alice's voice was tight with fear. I followed her gaze to the mirror. Our reflections stood side by side, but something was wrong. In the depths of the glass, shadows moved independently of our bodies. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees in seconds. We should go, Alice whispered. But as we moved toward the door, both our reflections turned to look directly at us, not mimicking our movements, acting independently. Alice grabbed my hand, fingers ice cold with terror. What the hell is happening? The mirror showed us standing frozen by the door, but our reflections were walking deeper into the glass, toward something we couldn't see. The whispers I'd heard the night before returned, urgent and insistent. Then everything went silent. Our reflections returned to normal, perfectly matching our movements again. The temperature rose back to comfortable levels. The only evidence anything had happened was the way Alice's hand trembled in mine. We're staying at my place tonight, Alice said firmly. I didn't argue. Alice's apartment felt like a sanctuary compared to the Victorian house. Modern furniture, organized bookshelves, everything logical and grounded in reality. We sat on her couch with cups of tea, both trying to pretend the night's events hadn't shaken us to our cores. There has to be a rational explanation, Alice said, her psychology training kicking in. Stress, suggestion, old glass playing tricks with light. You saw it too. I saw something. That doesn't make it supernatural. But her voice lacked conviction, and she kept glancing at her own hallway mirror, as if expecting it to misbehave. The next morning, I drove to the Omaha Public Library's local history section. If answers existed, they'd be buried in old records and newspaper archives. Alice met me there after her morning sessions, curiosity overriding her skepticism. Find anything? She asked, settling beside me at the research table. I pushed a photocopied newspaper article toward her. November 1925. 2 women found dead in a house on Dodge Street. Alice read silently, her expression growing more troubled with each line. Eleanor Hartwell and Catherine Mason. Described as companions who shared the residence for 3 years. Companions. I traced the euphemistic language with my finger. Listen to this. Miss Hartwell worked as a dance instructor while Miss Mason provided private counseling services to troubled individuals. Alice's eyes widened. Dance and therapy, like us, gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. I showed her another clipping. 3 days after their deaths, this editorial ran condemning unnatural relationships that corrupt moral society. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. 2 women, living quietly together in 1920s Omaha, their chosen professions, the way they'd died suddenly, without clear explanation, followed by moral outrage suggesting their relationship had been discovered. They were lovers, Alice whispered. And it killed them. We spent the rest of the afternoon digging through records, building a picture of Eleanor and Catherine's life together. Property deeds showed Eleanor had inherited the house from her grandmother in 1922. Bank records revealed they'd pooled their resources, living as a family unit in everything but legal recognition. Then their world had collapsed. A neighbor's complaint about inappropriate conduct led to police investigation. Within a week, both women were dead. The official cause was listed as accidental gas poisoning, but the timing felt too convenient. They were murdered, I said as we walked to my car. Or driven to suicide by persecution. Alice's face was pale. Either way, they died because of who they loved. That evening, we returned to the Victorian house together. Alice insisted on coming, claiming she needed to face her fears professionally. Really, I think neither of us wanted to be alone with what we discovered. The mirror waited in the parlor, innocuous in daylight but somehow more ominous now that we knew its history. We approached it cautiously, like it might strike without warning. "Eleanor and Catherine," I said aloud. "Are you here?" Alice shot me a look. "What are you doing?" If they're somehow connected to this mirror, maybe acknowledging them will help. The glass remained normal, showing only our own reflections. But as darkness fell outside, the familiar chill returned to the room. This time, we were ready for it. The shadows appeared gradually, two figures moving behind our reflections. Alice gripped my hand tightly as we watched Eleanor and Catherine materialize in the depths of the mirror. They wore clothing from the 1920s, their hair styled in finger waves, their expressions filled with desperate love and fear. They were beautiful together, Eleanor's dark hair contrasting with Catherine's golden blonde. The way they held each other spoke of deep intimacy and terrible knowledge that their time was limited. "They're showing us something," Alice breathed. The mirror figures gestured toward the staircase, then back to each other. Eleanor kissed Catherine tenderly, and both women in the glass turned to look directly at us with pleading eyes. "They want us to understand something," I said. As if responding to my words, the room grew warmer. The oppressive fear lifted slightly, replaced by something else. Recognition, hope. Alice pulled me closer, her psychology training warring with experiences that defied explanation. "This is impossible." So was what we felt the first night we kissed. Our eyes met, the truth hanging between us like a bridge waiting to be crossed. The mirror showed Eleanor and Catherine embracing fearlessly, despite the world that would destroy them for loving each other. "They're showing us what they never got to have," Alice whispered. "A future together." The reflection wavered, and suddenly Eleanor and Catherine were gone. Only Alice and I remained in the glass, standing close enough to share breath, close enough to choose courage over fear. Alice turned from the mirror to face me directly. "I'm tired of being afraid." "Me too." This time, when she kissed me, it felt like coming home. The kiss broke something open inside both of us. Standing in that parlor with Eleanor and Catherine's love story swirling around us, Alice and I finally stopped fighting what had been building between us for weeks. "This is really happening," Alice murmured against my lips. "Are you okay with that?" Her answer was another kiss, deeper this time, her hands tangling in my hair like she was afraid I might disappear. We spent the next morning researching Eleanor and Catherine more thoroughly, piecing together fragments of their hidden life. In the Historical Society archives, we found Eleanor's dance programs from the Orpheum Theater, advertising modern movement for ladies. Catherine had advertised discreetly as a counselor for nervous conditions and marital difficulties. They'd built something beautiful together, two women creating space for healing in a world that barely acknowledged their right to exist. "Look at this," Alice said, pointing to a faded photograph in a society page. Two women at a charity fundraiser, standing just close enough to suggest intimacy while maintaining proper appearances. Eleanor and Catherine smiled at the camera with the kind of joy people couldn't hide completely, even in 1925. They'd found each other and created a life worth living, right up until society decided to destroy them. That evening, back at the house, the mirror showed us more. This time, Eleanor and Catherine appeared during a thunderstorm that rattled the old windows. They moved through scenes from their life together. Eleanor teaching Catherine to dance in their private parlor, Catherine comforting Eleanor after difficult performances, both women reading poetry by lamplight. "They were happy," I said, watching their tender exchanges. "Until the end." Alice's voice was sad. They knew it couldn't last. The mirror shifted, showing us the night everything changed. We watched neighbors gathering outside, pointing accusingly at the house, police arriving with official papers, Eleanor and Catherine holding each other as their world crumbled around them. The final scene showed them alone in this same parlor, Eleanor's arms around Catherine as she wept. No words were needed, we understood their choice. Death together rather than life apart. As the vision faded, Alice turned to me with tears in her eyes. They never got to see what was possible. They died thinking love like theirs could never survive. Something shifted between us in that moment. The weight of Eleanor and Catherine's tragedy mixed with the knowledge that we had choices they never did. We could be together openly, build something lasting, honor their memory by refusing to hide. Alice moved closer, her hand finding mine. I don't want to waste any more time being afraid. Neither do I. This time, when we kissed, it felt like a promise. Alice's mouth was soft and urgent against mine, her body pressing close as years of suppressed longing finally found expression. We moved together toward the couch, hands exploring, breath coming faster. Are you sure? I whispered, as Alice's fingers traced the line of my throat. Never been more sure of anything. What followed was gentle and intense, Alice's touch reverent as she explored my body like she was memorizing every curve. I'd never felt so completely seen, so thoroughly cherished. When our bodies joined, it was with the kind of desperate tenderness that spoke of hearts finally finding their home. Afterward, we lay tangled together on the old couch, Alice's head on my shoulder, both of us quiet with the magnitude of what had changed between us. The mirror, Alice said softly. I looked toward it and saw Eleanor and Catherine watching us with expressions of profound peace. They raised their hands in what looked like blessing, then slowly faded until only our own reflection remained. They're at rest now, I said. Because we chose what they couldn't. Alice traced lazy patterns on my skin, both of us savoring the intimacy that felt both brand new and like something we'd been building toward our entire lives. Outside, the storm moved on, leaving clear skies and the promise of dawn. Alice and I had found each other, found courage, found a love worth fighting for. In the mirror, our reflections showed two women no longer afraid to claim their happiness. The knock on my front door came at 7 a.m, jarring me from the kind of deep sleep that only follows complete surrender. Alice stirred beside me on the couch where we'd spent the night wrapped together, her blonde hair catching early sunlight streaming through the Victorian windows. Expecting someone? She murmured, pressing closer. No. I reached for my robe, dread settling in my stomach like cold stone. Through the peephole, I saw Marcus Thompson, Alice's ex-boyfriend from medical school. Tall, confident, holding flowers like he belonged here. My heart sank. It's Marcus, I called to Alice. She shot upright, suddenly fully awake. What's he doing here? You tell me. Alice threw on her clothes from the night before, running fingers through tangled hair. We both looked like exactly what we were, two women who'd spent the night making love, and there was no hiding it. I opened the door to Marcus's expectant smile, which faltered when he saw my obvious state of undress and Alice appearing behind me, equally disheveled. Surprise, he said weakly. Marcus, what are you doing here? Alice's voice was carefully controlled, but I heard the panic underneath. Flew in from Denver to surprise you. Your neighbor said you'd been spending time at this address. His eyes moved between us, putting pieces together. I can see you've been busy. The accusation in his tone made my skin crawl. Alice stepped closer to me, a gesture of protection that didn't go unnoticed. We need to talk, Alice said, but not here. Actually, I think here is perfect. Marcus pushed past me into the parlor, his gaze landing on the rumpled couch, the wine glasses from last night, the intimate atmosphere that screamed what had happened here. Cozy setup you've got. Marcus, please leave. Alice's professional calm was cracking. Not until you explain what the hell is going on. I've been calling for weeks, driving myself crazy wondering why you went radio silent, and I find you playing house with her? The word her dripped with disgust that made me want to throw him out physically. This isn't your business, I said. Like hell it isn't. Alice and I have been together for 3 years. We talked about marriage. And now I find her shacked up with some dance teacher in a haunted house? Ex-boyfriend, Marcus. You're my ex-boyfriend, Alice said firmly. We broke up because we wanted different things. We broke up because you were confused. This proves it. The dismissive way he waved toward me, like I was a phase Alice was going through, ignited my temper. Get out of my house. Or what? You'll dance at me? Before I could respond, the mirror behind Marcus began to shimmer. The temperature dropped suddenly, and Eleanor and Catherine appeared in the glass, their faces twisted with protective fury. Marcus spun around, saw the reflection that didn't match reality, and stumbled backward. What the hell? The mirror showed Eleanor and Catherine advancing, their ghostly forms radiating decades of suppressed rage at men who thought they owned women's choices. Objects began moving around the room, books flying off shelves, picture frames rattling against walls. Jesus Christ, Marcus gasped, heading for the door. That's right, run, I called after him. But our troubles were just beginning. 2 hours later, my sister Sarah arrived unannounced, having driven down from Council Bluffs after Marcus called her. Sarah had always been the conservative one, the sister who married her high school sweetheart and produced 3 kids before 30. Caitlin, we need to talk. Alice squeezed my hand. I should go. No, stay. She might as well know. Sarah's eyes took in Alice's presence, the obvious intimacy between us, the way we stood united against judgment. Her face hardened. Is it true? Are you living some kind of lesbian lifestyle now? I'm living honestly for the first time in my life. With her? A woman you barely know? In grandmother's house where decent people used to live? Decent people like Eleanor and Catherine? Sarah's face went pale. She'd heard the family stories about the women who died in this house, the shame our grandmother carried about what had happened here. Those women were sick, Caitlin. Unnatural. Is that what you want to become? Alice stepped forward. There's nothing unnatural about love. Stay out of this. You've done enough damage. Sarah turned back to me. Come home. Get counseling. Fix this before it's too late. There's nothing to fix. You're throwing your life away for sexual confusion. What will people think? What will our parents' friends say? The mirror began to glow behind us, Eleanor and Catherine appearing again. But this time, they looked sad rather than angry, recognizing the familiar pain of family rejection. That evening, after Sarah left in tears and Marcus had presumably returned to Denver, Alice and I found ourselves at Upstream Books for the weekly poetry night. We'd decided to attend together, openly, as a couple. The bookstore felt different now. What had once been a safe sanctuary now felt like a stage where our relationship would be judged. I saw the looks, the whispered conversations, the way some people glanced between us with calculating curiosity. When the host called for readers, Alice stood up. I'd like to share something original tonight, she said, moving to the microphone. My heart hammered as she began to read, her voice clear and strong. For the women who came before us, who loved in shadow and died in silence, who carved out spaces for impossible hearts, in a world that called them unnatural. For Eleanor and Catherine, for every woman who chose love over safety, who whispered yes when the world screamed no. We are your daughters. We are your dreams made manifest. We are the future you died believing would never come. Dead silence filled the bookstore. Then, slowly, scattered applause began. Not everyone clapped, but enough did to matter. Alice returned to her seat beside me, took my hand openly, and kissed me gently. The simple gesture felt revolutionary. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. In the mirror behind the poetry section, I caught a glimpse of Eleanor and Catherine smiling before they faded away forever, their purpose finally complete. The weeks following our public declaration at the poetry reading brought unexpected consequences. Word traveled fast in Omaha's small artistic community. Some clients stopped booking sessions, uncomfortable with my openness about loving Alice. Others sought us out specifically because we represented authenticity in a world of facades. Alice faced similar reactions at her practice. 3 long-term clients canceled appointments, but 2 new ones called asking for therapists who understood unconventional relationships. We're polarizing, Alice said over breakfast in the Victorian house kitchen. We'd been staying there together most nights, the mirror quiet now that Eleanor and Catherine had found peace. Is that bothering you? She considered this, coffee mug warming her hands. Actually, no. For the first time in my life, I'm not trying to be acceptable to everyone. The house had become our sanctuary. We'd moved Alice's books into my grandmother's old study, combined our furniture in ways that made the space feel like ours rather than just mine. The mirror in the parlor reflected only us now, 2 women building a life together without apology. But that fragile peace shattered on a Tuesday morning when both Marcus and my sister Sarah showed up together, armed with what they called an intervention. This has gone far enough, Sarah announced, barging past me into the parlor where Alice sat reading case files. Marcus followed, his face set with grim determination. We're not leaving until you both come to your senses. We called Pastor Williams, Sarah continued. He's driving down from Council Bluffs to counsel you through this phase. Phase? Alice stood up slowly, papers scattering. You think love is a phase? I think you're both having some kind of breakdown, Marcus said. Living in this creepy old house, convincing yourselves you're channeling dead lesbians. It's textbook psychological displacement. The clinical dismissal in his voice made me furious, but before I could respond, the familiar chill filled the room. The mirror began to shimmer, and Eleanor and Catherine appeared one final time. They looked different now, more solid, more present. Their period clothing was pristine, their faces radiant with protective fury. They stepped forward in the glass as if they might actually emerge into our world. Sarah screamed. Marcus stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. What the hell is that thing? The mirror showed Eleanor and Catherine advancing toward Sarah and Marcus with expressions of absolute rage. Books flew off shelves, windows rattled in their frames, and the temperature plunged so fast our breath came out in visible puffs. Get out, Eleanor's voice whispered through the air, different from anything we'd heard before. Leave them alone. Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm, dragging her toward the door. This place is cursed. You're both insane to stay here. They fled, Sarah sobbing hysterically about demons and unnatural spirits. Their car tires squealed as they raced away from the house. Alice and I stood in the sudden silence, watching Eleanor and Catherine fade back into peaceful transparency. They won't be back, I said. No, and neither will anyone else who can't accept us. That evening, Alice suggested we celebrate our newfound freedom by making love in the parlor where Eleanor and Catherine had found and lost each other. The symbolism felt important, claiming space that had once witnessed love destroyed by fear. Alice led me to the couch where we'd first given in to desire, her hands gentle as she began unbuttoning my blouse. I want to love you here, where they couldn't love freely. Her touch was reverent, worshipful, as if she were honoring not just me but every woman who'd ever loved in secret. When she kissed her way down my throat, I felt Eleanor and Catherine's blessing washing over us. We moved together with desperate tenderness, Alice's body against mine, our whispered endearments echoing in the room where other women had once spoken the same words of love and longing. When release claimed us both, it felt like victory, like revolution, like coming home. Afterward, wrapped in Alice's arms, I looked toward the mirror and saw our reflection clearly, two women no longer hiding from the world or themselves. They're really gone, aren't they? Alice said softly. Their work is finished. We chose love over fear. We're living the life they died dreaming of. Alice traced patterns on my bare shoulder, both of us savoring the intimacy that had become our refuge from a world that still struggled to understand women like us. What happens now? She asked. Now we build something beautiful, together. In the mirror, our reflection showed two women who'd found the courage to claim their happiness despite the cost. Eleanor and Catherine's love story had ended in tragedy, but ours was just beginning. Outside, Omaha slept under winter stars, and inside the Victorian house on Dodge Street, Alice and I dreamed of the future we would create together, one honest kiss at a time. 3 months after Marcus and Sarah's dramatic exit, Alice and I stood in the renovated Victorian parlor addressing 12 couples seeking relationship counseling. Our combined practice had evolved into something neither of us had imagined possible. Movement and talk therapy together create breakthrough moments, I explained to the group, watching their faces reflect curiosity rather than judgment. Bodies hold trauma that words can't always reach. Alice nodded toward our first demonstration couple. Show us what disconnection looks like in your relationship. The heterosexual couple stood awkwardly apart, arms crossed, avoiding eye contact. Classic defensive postures that spoke volumes about their communication breakdown. Now, Alice continued, we're going to guide you through synchronized movement that mirrors emotional intimacy. This was our innovation, combining Alice's psychological insight with my dance therapy training. We discovered that couples who moved together began talking more honestly, breaking through barriers that traditional counseling sometimes couldn't penetrate. The mirror that had once shown us Eleanor and Catherine now reflected healing in progress. Couple after couple worked through their issues in our space, finding connection where alienation had lived. Business was thriving. Word spread through Omaha's progressive community about the two women therapists who weren't afraid to address love in all its forms. We worked with straight couples rediscovering passion, gay men learning to communicate vulnerability, lesbian couples navigating family rejection. You two make this look easy, said Janet, one half of a couple we'd been seeing for weeks. How long have you been together? Officially, 6 months. But it feels like we've been finding each other for years. Alice smiled at me across the room, the same warm expression I woke up to every morning in our shared bed upstairs. After the session ended and clients filtered out, Alice found me cleaning up the parlor. "Good day," she said, sliding arms around my waist from behind. "The best." Did you see how breakthrough moment when Sarah and Mike actually made eye contact during the trust exercise? Magic happens when people stop hiding from themselves. Alice kissed my neck, and I leaned back against her familiar warmth. 6 months of living together had only deepened our connection. We'd learned each other's rhythms, morning coffee preferences, the way Alice hummed unconsciously when she read case files, how I stretched like a cat after long therapy sessions. That evening, we walked to Upstream Books for poetry night. It had become our weekly tradition, the place where we'd first found each other and later chose to love openly. The bookstore crowd had grown accustomed to seeing us together. Some people still stared, but most offered friendly waves or asked about our practice. Omaha was changing, slowly but noticeably. "Who's reading tonight?" Alice asked the host. "Actually, we were hoping you two would. It's been a while since you shared original work." Alice looked at me questioningly. We'd written something together the week before, verses about love surviving across time, about women who chose courage over safety. "Together?" I suggested. Alice nodded, and we moved to the microphone as one unit. "This is for Eleanor and Catherine," Alice began, "and for every woman who loved authentically when authenticity was dangerous." We read in alternating verses, our voices weaving together like our lives had intertwined. They carved initials in oak trees that still stand in Hartwell Park, E and C inside a heart, weathered but never erased. We found their love letters, hidden in the attic, pages of longing preserved, like pressed flowers. I continued, "We are the answer to prayers they whispered in dark bedrooms, hoping someday women like them could love without hiding, could build lives together, in plain sight, could grow old creating beauty, instead of dying for it." Alice finished, "Tonight we dance, in the parlor where they wept. We kiss in the kitchen, where they planned impossible tomorrows. Their mirror reflects our happiness, their house shelters our dreams. We are their victory, their love made visible, their hearts finally free." The applause was warm, genuine. Several people wiped tears from their eyes. An elderly woman approached afterward. "My sister lived with her companion for 40 years, she said quietly. "They never could acknowledge what you two have. Thank you for showing us what's possible." Walking home through autumn streets that had become familiar territory, Alice took my hand. Simple gesture, but one that still felt revolutionary every time. "Are you happy?" she asked. "Completely. You? Never imagined I could be this happy." At home, we settled into our evening routine. Alice graded therapy notes, while I planned movement sequences for next week's sessions. The mirror caught our reflection, two women building something beautiful together in the space where other women had dreamed of such possibilities. Before bed, I found Alice on the front porch, looking up at October stars. "Thinking about anything in particular?" "Just grateful. For Eleanor and Catherine bringing us together. For having the courage to choose this. For you." I sat beside her on the porch swing that had been there since the 1920s. Probably where Eleanor and Catherine once sat planning their secret life together. "I love you," I said, words that came easier every time I spoke them. "I love you too." Above us, the Victorian house stood solid and peaceful, filled with the kind of love its first owners had dreamed of but never fully claimed. Alice and I had inherited more than just property. We'd inherited possibility, turning tragedy into triumph, fear into freedom. In the window behind us, the mirror reflected two women who'd found the courage to love openly, building the future that Eleanor and Catherine had died believing might someday come.